With the development and distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines, many people are going to their nearest available clinic to get their doses in order to shield themselves from the virus. A lot of people are happy to see the development of these vaccines because it means that we as a population could be nearing the end of the pandemic. However, according to Katrina Maggette, a science journalist at the BMJ Journal, a recent study was done with participants living in New York City. The study found that only 59% of the participants claimed that they would go get vaccinated, and only 53% of those participants said that they would vaccinate their children. Although this percentage is the majority, this is a relatively small number in comparison with the percentage of those vaccinated for other illnesses, such as influenza, measles, and mumps. One would think that this percentage would be a lot higher considering the global pandemic. However, this is just an example of a recently popular movement. Today, I will be exploring vaccinations and their counterarguments, made present by the anti-vaccination movement, which I will look further into. Vaccinations have been around since the early 1800s, first made to combat the smallpox outbreak at the time. A vaccine is defined as a substance that introduces a whole or partial version of a pathogenic microorganism into the body in order to train the immune system to defend itself when the organism threatens to cause an infection. Vaccinations are incredibly common and natural in the United States. In fact, the first physical act required of an individual by the US government after birth is to be vaccinated. As a result, these vaccines seem necessary and normal. However, studies show that a quarter of all Americans are now hesitant to vaccinate their children. This new trend is due to the anti-vaccination movement. Although very popular in recent times, the anti-vaccination movement, or anti-vax for short, dates back to the late 1800s. In 1871, the Dutch government made it a requirement for all school children to be vaccinated in order to continue their studies. This caused widespread objection by the Dutch population, resulting in the formation of the Association to Oppose Compulsory Vaccination. This is known as the first anti-vax movement. Much of the belief with this movement was built on the foundation of pure liberty freedom. The group argued that mandates on vaccinations are a violation of individual liberty, infringing on the belief that people are free to choose what to do with their health. In addition to this belief, many of the population at the time believed that vaccines were an act against God, claiming that injections were impure and unholy. Although gaining traction during this time, the question remains, how did the anti-vaccination movement gain so much popularity today? This is because of Andrew Wakefield. In 1998, Wakefield and a group of other researchers published a paper claiming the direct link between MMR vaccinations and autism. Although he was later discredited, the vaccination rate began to plummet in the United States, increasing the concern of scientists and researchers. This movement has also gained an incredible amount of support recently with the result of the global pandemic. With the reluctance to receive the new COVID-19 vaccines, many have now begun to question the validity of vaccines as a whole, thus increasing the popularity and strength of the movement. As a result of this movement, scientists have stressed the importance of vaccines and their effectiveness. The anti-vaccination movement is ill-informed and wrong. The reason the opposition is incorrect is because of the lack of science and fact to support their arguments. Some may argue that vaccinations are against their beliefs. However, the percentage of these cases are incredibly low. Those who argue that vaccines are linked to autism and any other chronic illness have no scientific or statistical research to support the claim. Vaccines benefit the recipients and do not cause harm, according to the CDC. In fact, the movement itself is the one that causes the harm. In 2014, the United States reported a record number of measles cases from 27 different states, increasing threefold from any previous year since 2000. 55% of the reported cases resulted from the individual being unvaccinated, and 31% of the cases were of unknown vaccination status. As a result, unvaccinated cases cause outbreaks of illnesses that are easily preventable. Vaccines are incredibly effective. Even the COVID vaccines, who are claimed to be developed also quickly, are found to be 90% effective. I was given the opportunity to interview with Dr. Teresa Ho, a scientist in the microbiology department at the University of Iowa. I was able to discuss with her her perspectives on vaccine hesitancy and COVID-19 vaccines. In fact, Dr. Ho was able to be part of the study to test the new vaccines. Okay. So like many people argue, especially with this like vaccine, recent COVID-19 vaccines, that it took very little time to be developed, especially like with the pandemic, how quickly it was able to be developed in comparison with like influenza, measles, mumps, polio. Like those vaccines took years and years of like trials and stuff like that. So why is this vaccine different or similar than the others? And like how would you ease that concern?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. The process, the scientific process of vetting that the vaccine, nothing was shortcut there, nothing. What is very different is that you have to think about, the vaccine development is driven not by, it's driven by science, the development, the initial development, but the actual getting the approval, all of that and production is all driven by pharmaceutical industry. What scares me the most about people refusing or being hesitant or delaying vaccination is obviously people who aren't vaccinated can get the disease, and I think a lot of people who are hesitant tend to think that the outcomes are not going to be so bad for them, and that's maybe true for different populations. The big problem is they're not, in a community, in a society, we have to be careful about protecting each other as well.
In this presentation, I explored the nature of vaccines and how beneficial they are to the public. In order to properly display their significance, I discussed the anti-vaccination movement and its origins, showing how their claims and arguments were formed and how those claims and arguments were incorrect. Although the anti-vaccination movement claimed that vaccines were dangerous and caused harm, there was no scientific facts to back up the claim. Vaccines were created in order to prevent harm from deadly viruses and illness. And regarding the modern day, vaccines were produced in order to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. The vaccines have high prevention rates, allowing the population to shield itself from the pandemic and hopefully eliminate it. Thank you.